welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And with that, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
Hello, Nate. It's great to be here. Busy week in games this week. What's going on? There's a lot happening.
There is a lot happening in gaming this week. In just over a day, we're going to see the first trailer for Rockstar's highly anticipated Grand Theft Auto 6. Ooh. And then we have the Game Awards following just a couple of days later. So a lot of reveals, a lot of excitement, and a lot of anticipation of what is about to come for the gaming industry and what the future of the industry is going to look like.
Exciting stuff.
And another bit of excitement. Today's episode is dedicated to Shamsa, who generously donated $100 to support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount. Ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. Donate $100 or more. We will dedicate the episode to you. And once again, today's episode is dedicated to Shamsa. Thank you for your continued support and generosity. And today we're going to be talking about the upcoming Game Awards and give some predictions of what we think or even know will be shown at Jeff Keighley's annual industry celebration. And I want to start with the first party console manufacturers. And I think a good company to lead off with is going to be Nintendo, as they have had a banner year in 2023. And they have Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Wonder nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards. So there's definitely a lot of eyes wondering, what will Nintendo bring to the Game Awards? As if we look at their historic pattern, they haven't brought anything too meaningful to the Game Awards, at least not since Reggie Fils-Aimé had resigned and stepped down from Nintendo of America president position. But people still go into the Game Awards always expecting and anticipating something from Nintendo. And will this be the year that potentially they buck the trend and return to prominence with something of great importance?
Well, as you quite rightly said, they do have two games in the Game of the Year conversation, which is fantastic. Both of those games I've played and finished, and I think both of those deserve their place. But we're not here to talk about Game of the Year. We're here to talk about predictions. Look, Nintendo usually doesn't have anything at the Game Awards, Nate, other than some type of holiday type of trailer or, holiday advertisement where they talk about all the award winning and the games that they've currently, for sale and have sold very well, including Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder, Mario RPG, just to name three. Mario Kart, of course, you can't forget that because that is the most evergreen game of them all. I don't really see anything else beyond some type of advertising, and I don't really think that Nintendo is going to bring us any new announcements at the Game Awards.
Yeah, there's been a lot of online rumor and talk about random projects, including an Ocarina of Time remake, which I'm not sure where the foundation of that rumor is really based upon. But then others have also gone as far as suggest that maybe Nintendo will use the Game Awards as the venue to announce the successor hardware to the Switch.
Well, and let's pause and let's kind of talk about those for a sec. Let's just say there was an Ocarina of Time remaster or remake in the works. Why would they not announce that at a Nintendo Direct? And why would they not announce new hardware on their own terms? Why would they use the Game Awards as the platform for that? They don't need the Game Awards. And I think for me, that's why I have to just basically shoot those two things down. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, if I'm Nintendo, I definitely wouldn't be using the Game Awards as the venue to announce either of those things. And I know some people would make the argument of, oh, well, the Game Awards has 100 million eyes on it. So what a place to announce something like new hardware or a highly anticipated remake of one of the greatest games of all time. And it still doesn't add up for me. So when I see those types of rumors and even speculation going around, I do wonder where it's coming from. Is this just kind of a pipe dream of, oh, this is a big event at the end of the year, and it's basically operating under the assumption that Nintendo will want to close out the year with an impactful announcement? But I don't feel as though 2023 is the year that Nintendo would have to conclude with an impactful announcement. We're very deep in the Switch generation. We have to basically operate under the belief that there's not much in terms of major unknown releases still to come to the Switch. So that development pipeline now should more or less be emptying. So when you look at the Game Award, could I see them potentially announce some minor port or a remaster of a game like a Metroid Prime 2 Echoes? Yes. Could I see them announce some DLC for a game that maybe came out in 2023? Let's just say, Mario Wonder, some sort of DLC for that. Yes, but nothing beyond that type of tier announcement. I think anything Nintendo does bring here is going to be very minor, maybe matching what they did last year, where they had announced Fire Emblem Engage DLC and they announced Bayonetta Origins. But beyond announcements of that scope, I don't think Nintendo's going to have any meaningful presence at the Game Awards. As you had mentioned, they'll run their traditional holiday advertisement, letting people know the Switch has games, they have
Yes.
bundles,
Yes.
and there's a variety of software that can appeal to you as a family or even an individual of one in your gaming taste. But beyond that, I think Nintendo is going to go very conservative, especially that's how they played the Game Awards in recent years. And I see no reason for them to really buck the trend in this year. Now, going forward, if we're looking to the Game Awards of 2024, 2025, when Nintendo has new hardware out there,
Yes.
I can see Nintendo potentially view the Game Awards as a valuable venue to announce high profile games. And you could make the argument that in 2023, we're still living in a world of uncertainty when it comes to Metroid Prime 4. And given it's a very Western appealing franchise and the Game Awards is primarily for American audiences, you could pair those two and say this is a good marriage, but it also doesn't feel as though it's the venue that Nintendo would want to put something like Metroid Prime 4 for one key reason. There is a significant amount of competition, and it would really not dominate the conversation as it would in a Nintendo Direct.
It would get buried, Nate. And another, I mean, just on that, has there ever been anything Metroid related at a Game Awards ever?
There was a pin once on Reggie, and we did have Metroid Dread when it was nominated. But beyond that, there's really never been anything meaningful for Metroid.
I'm going to stick to my guns. I don't think there's going to be anything. Like, I mean, there could be some type of DLC or some, like, lesser tier announcement potentially. But look, you really kind of nailed it. This is the sun. The sun is setting on the Switch right now. The sun is setting, and Nintendo is sitting on the beach sipping pina coladas. They're not in marketing mode trying to get people onto the new system and new announcements for new games on new hardware. They know exactly what they have, and they know exactly what's coming out next year for the Switch. I don't believe there's anything that's being announced at the Game Awards.
Yeah, I mean, I could simply see Nintendo revisit some of the announcements of the games they had announced this year that will be releasing next year. So maybe if we saw a quick sizzle reel that had included Super Princess Peach and Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, things like that, I could definitely see happening. But as a Nintendo fan, I am approaching the Game Awards with really no expectation. So that way I don't go in anticipating anything and being disappointed. I'm going in expecting nothing. So if in a hypothetical scenario, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes remaster was there and shadow dropped and we could pick it up from the eShop on the eve of the Game Awards, I'd be like, wow, that's a great surprise. Would definitely be turning on the Switch and downloading the game as soon as I could.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely going in with, hey, I'm expecting to see a lot of Nintendo Switch ads and nothing more.
Yeah. I agree.
We then have Microsoft and the Xbox, and this is a huge contrast to what we have from Nintendo. Microsoft always approaches the Game Awards with some meaning and one or two significant announcements. And we can go back to the Game Awards of 2019 when Microsoft announced the Xbox Series X. Then in 2020, we saw the first look at Perfect Dark. And this has just been a trend for Microsoft. They see the value that the Game Awards provides their brand. And I think this year in 2023, Microsoft is once again going to use the Game Awards to their advantage and announce a couple of things to bring about some momentum and energy to the Xbox and the Xbox Series branding so that people can look forward to what the system has to offer them moving into 2024 and potentially even beyond.
Yes, I agree. Xbox has used the Game Awards platform to really kind of, boost their marketing and their hype around games. And you're right. I think this year will be no exception. If I was to predict the kind of the low hanging fruit, maybe. I mean, nothing is ever guaranteed, of course, because we don't know. But I think Hellblade 2 will be at the Game Awards because it's been there. I think it was there last year, and it was there in 2019, like you said. And I think it's now time for Hellblade 2 to get a release date. So I think I would put money on Hellblade 2 being at the Game Awards with something a little more substantial in terms of gameplay versus visuals. And I think we're going to get a release date for next year. I don't know when the release date will be. That's a different conversation, but I think they're going to basically shore up the Hellblade date. And I think Hellblade 2 is going to be a very impressive showing at the Game Awards, just like it has been the last two times.
Yeah, I think that is a very good prediction. I mean, what other predictions do you have from Microsoft that you think they may potentially bring to the show?
See, that's tough, but there's probably going to be a Game Pass announcement or two, I'm sure, that gets thrown in. I mean, they obviously have other studios. They have, the Bethesda studios we haven't really heard much of. There was that, what was it, Doom Year 1 leak, that Year 0, I think it was leak. So that's, potentially we could see something from id, but I don't really know beyond that. What do you think, though? What do you got?
So one thing that I do know will be at the Game Awards is from the Bethesda side of Microsoft, and it comes from our friends, Arcane. Arcane will announce a brand new game at the Game Awards.
Okay. This is not going to be Redfall 2, is it?
It will not be Redfall 2, to my knowledge, though the extent of my information is strictly to Arcane has a new announcement for the Game Awards. I don't know what the project is, so I'm going in quite blind.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many projects that Arcane could be working on. I mean, I think a lot of fans would be operating under that idea of, could we get Dishonored 3? And that would excite a lot of people. Or could it be Deathloop 2? Could it be something in that universe of Deathloop?
Or Prey 2, potentially.
That's another fantastic one.
Yeah.
And, I don't have the answer to that. All I know is Arcane will be there. And that alone is enough for me to get excited, because we've seen the pedigree that Arcane puts out in terms of games. Redfall aside, they've always been an elite tier studio. So I am curious as to what Arcane shows up with here. And, is it going to excite that Xbox base? Is this going to be one of those moments that Xbox fans can sit there and be like, okay, we see what that roadmap is. It's beginning to flesh out more and more. We're excited about our brand. We're excited about the platform of choice. And we're finally seeing some fruits from these acquisitions. Because when you look back at when Microsoft had acquired ZeniMax and Bethesda and such, they were still operating under those contracts that they had made prior to the acquisition, where they were honoring exclusives like Deathloop being a PlayStation exclusive for the first 12 months. And then you also had that with Ghostwire Tokyo. And now they're finally free and they can really commit to just going to the Xbox. Though, in certain cases, perhaps the game still goes multi-platform. As we know, Microsoft's been very open about that possibility with select franchises and releases. But now we can see what these studios are up to. We can see brand new releases for them, and we can see Microsoft leverage it as a opportunity of strength. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Arcane has in store for us next week.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to hear that there will be an Arcane announcement. As you were saying, I think the other question I want to ask is about Gears of War 6 or Gears 6. So there's been some chatter about it. I think Colt Eastwood had made some rumblings about a Gears 6 at the Game Awards. People are talking about Gears 6 Coalition. We haven't really heard much from them in a while. Do you believe there is a Gears 6 at the Game Awards? I personally, and I'm just this is my own opinion. I personally don't think Gears 6 will be at the Game Awards. I think once again, Microsoft will announce their games in the same way as Nintendo on their own terms, on their own platform. Even though the Game Awards has been very good to Xbox and Microsoft over the years, there's that lingering developer direct, which I think we'll have next year, right? Like they had it this year. I think it was a success for Microsoft. I don't think they want to do away with that. I think they want to continue doing that and potentially double down on that now that they have more studios and they have more things going on. So I would probably say Gears 6 is a next year type thing announcement. But what do you think about the Gears 6 chatter that's going around?
As much as I want to see Gears of War 6, I think Gears 6 is, as you were saying, something that they would announce at the earliest June of 2024.
Yeah.
And my reasoning would be you're announcing an Arcane game at the Game Awards.
Right.
So that's clearly a project of importance to you. You want to have that as a focus. You want that to excite individuals. And you don't want to take away from that by announcing a second type of game. So keep the focus on this one. And when you look at Microsoft's history at the Game Awards, it really has primarily been one huge new game announcement.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
So I think you'd want to continue that. And to your point with the developer direct that we had earlier this year, it did seem as though that was a huge success for them. And I wouldn't be surprised for them to repeat that come 2024. And that's where I have hesitation with Hellblade 2 being at the Game Awards. I feel as though that is something that you would hold for developer direct. Let's say it's at the end of January, first half of February of 2024. If Hellblade 2 is coming out in the first half of the year, that's where you showcase it with a meaningful gameplay demonstration. And then you have whatever the other games may be coming out in 2024, let's say Avowed, similar to what they did earlier this year with Forza and Redfall, and though Starfield had skipped it. And then maybe you have a surprise announcement of a smaller game in the vein of a Hi-Fi Rush. And if you can do that every single year and make it an annual event, people know what to anticipate. So I'd be very surprised if Microsoft doesn't continue to do developer directs in the first couple of months of each new year moving forward, because that was a great way to communicate with fans, date games that were coming out in the first half of the year. Because right now, Microsoft hasn't dated anything for the first half of 2024.
Right.
They've given us some vague 2024 windows on games like Hellblade 2 and Avowed, but you have to begin to communicate. And the Game Awards definitely isn't the venue for that. So that's where I think, as much as I want to see Gear 6, I want to see what the Coalition is doing, but I feel as though Gear 6 is definitely better suited for a Xbox showcase come June 2024, where they can, once again, headline and detail not only games for 2024, but 2025, 2026, and beyond if they feel that need. Because they did that quite well this year back in June, where they gave us a nice look at numerous projects coming down in their pipeline.
Yeah.
So Gear 6 definitely feels as though it is better suited for that type of presentation.
I agree. I think the only thing that we disagree on is Hellblade 2. I think personally, I mean, you bring up some very good points that maybe, Xbox, Microsoft would hold it for next year at a developer direct and then date it. I mean, that is very, very compelling, right? But I can't just help but feel that Hellblade 2 started its life at the Game Awards and it's going to end it on the Game Awards with a date. That's the only thing that's the only reason why I'm saying Hellblade 2 is going to be there.
I think a lot of people listening would agree with you. Have that full circle. It was born here.
Yep.
Now let it die here with a release date. And give us a nice gameplay demonstration, because we did see a very brief gameplay clip where we saw Senua walking around, came across a huge boss, was throwing spears at him and such. But we really haven't seen more of how this game is going to play, how how it's going to differ from the first game. So we definitely need a deep dive and, a nice 5 minute
Mhm.
gameplay demonstration would go a long way. I just feel as though that is something that they may hold for a developer direct. But
Yeah.
I would be glad to see the game once again at the Game Awards because I think that would definitely give Microsoft an extra boost of energy, especially when you pair it with something like the Arcane announcement, where Microsoft fans can walk away from the Game Awards feeling confident about what Microsoft is doing for the future. And there's been some wild speculation out there from a lot of the Xbox personalities. As you mentioned, they were mentioning Gears of War 6
Mhm.
and Fable and Perfect Dark and new hardware, new
No.
controllers, and essentially coming out with half a dozen or even more games. And this isn't an Xbox show.
Yeah, this is on Xbox Showcase. This
Calm
is the Game
down.
Awards. Keely just wants to keep moving things along. He wants to get on with it. He doesn't want to give Xbox 20 minutes of their own time to talk about their stuff.
Well, I mean, if Microsoft is willing to pay, I'm
I mean,
sure
I
he
guess, but
would be
then
more than accommodating.
you wouldn't pay that much money for the Game Awards. You would just do your own thing.
That's
Hence the
true.
developer direct next year.
Now we have Sony. Sony, I feel, is always a wild card when it
Oh
comes from the
man.
Game Awards. And when you look at their 2023, their major release basically boiled down to Spider Man 2. Yes, they had the Horizon Forbidden West expansion earlier this year. They also released PlayStation VR 2. We had the PlayStation Portal just over a month ago. But you never know what Sony's really going to do with the Game Awards. And I would say this year really mirrors their prior years, with the exception of one particular game. And it comes from Jeff Keighley's BFF, Hideo Kojima. I'd say it's basically all but certainty that we see a Death Stranding 2 trailer at the Game Awards.
Yes, I agree. Do we see a trailer and a release date, or do we just see a trailer? We're probably too early for a release date, right? I mean, I think we still have a little bit to go.
I think
Or
they could give it a window of release. Like, I think they could slap on, let's just say, fall 2024.
yeah, I could see that. And I think you're right. I mean, Sony has always been very all over the place at the Game Awards. It's very hard to predict. Once again, but most of the time, I feel like Sony sits out and they just kind of, don't worry about it too much. But I do think, yeah, Death Stranding 2 will be at the Game Awards, and we'll get
Mhm.
more of a look at the game.
Do you have any other predictions for Sony at the Game Awards? Or do you think their primary showpiece is just going to be Death Stranding 2?
Um, I don't know if there's going to be anything else. I mean, there's some, I guess a thought that maybe they could bring some smaller release from their back catalog. But look, I'm just like, this is hopes and dreams at this point. So I think the only thing Sony will give us is Death Stranding 2, honestly. I can't see anything else from them. What about you though? Do you think there's something, a surprise or something in the works that we'll see from the Sony camp? I mean, they've been very quiet, and they haven't had. I think it's fair to say they haven't had a great year this year. They've had a decent year, and we will talk about the years in reviews on another episode and stuff like that. But I don't know. So I think Sony is. I think they're mostly heads down right now, trying to figure out what their roadmap of games looks like over the next 5 or 6 years. So other than Death Stranding, I can't see anything. But what do you think, though?
Sony is definitely in a position of, I don't want to say weakness, but they're in a position where they have felt a little exposed,
Yeah.
especially in 2023, where they had the PlayStation Showcase, a first time in a few years. So there was a lot of anticipation around that show. And we didn't really see anything of value. We saw some live service games, and it was a show of great confusion where people walked away from it saying, where are Sony's games for 2024? Where are Sony games for the second half of 2023 beyond Spider-Man 2? And the showcase did not give us any answers. So when I come to the Game Awards, I'm kind of anticipating some minor updates on the early games that they will have in 2024, or some of the games that we have already been introduced to, something like Stellar Blade, Rise of the Ronin, Helldivers 2,
Mm-hmm.
even if they're just quick trailers with maybe a release date or a release window on those projects. In terms of a major announcement beyond a Death Stranding 2 trailer with maybe a release window, I'd say there is a slight possibility that Sucker Punch shows up with Ghost of Tsushima 2.
I mean, that would be a pretty hype announcement, but I also wonder if we will see it at the Game Awards and not next year. Because I think Sony, like you said, it's not weakness, but maybe it's a regrouping phase right now where they're trying to build again, right? So I am curious. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima 2 at the Game Awards would be, I mean, that would be a nice way to cap off the year and, bring in some momentum into 2024. Honestly, it may be more hype than Death Stranding 2 to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Not me. I love Death Stranding, by the way. I'm a big fan of that game. So it's an outside chance, I'll say. I'll give it like a 15% chance that we could see Sucker Punch turn up, but unlikely for me personally.
Yeah, I think it just exists that chance because it feels as though maybe Sony had listened to some of the criticisms back in June and sat and reevaluated and said, well, you know what? The Game Awards is a venue that we can take advantage of. And we have to assume, given the long silence from Sucker Punch, that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is now a few years into development and has to be at a state that they could comfortably be ready to show a trailer. Because when you look at Sony's marketing, especially in the early years, they weren't shy about headlining and announcing games 2+ years in advance of a release date. And that's exactly what they did with Spider-Man 2. They announced it 2 years in advance of release. And they had also announced that in tandem with Wolverine, which we have had no update on now in over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So coming out with a Ghost of Tsushima 2 trailer, which I would have anticipated them to do back in June, the fact that they didn't announce it then was kind of bewildering. So coming to the Game Awards, announce a sequel to one of your most beloved franchises from the PlayStation 4 era, a game that you released a director's cut on the PlayStation 5 with an expansion of a new island. Show your intentions of when the sequel could be coming out, whether you want to date it for late 2024 or 2025, 2026, whenever the game is ready to come out, just to give your fans something to cling to and be excited about. Very similar to what Microsoft likes to do at the Game Awards to their fans. Because right now, if you're a PlayStation 5, super fan, you're looking at what they have coming out in 2024, and you're kind of operating a bit on assumption. Like Rise of the Ronin should come out in 2024. Death Stranding 2 is likely 2024. Stellar Blade maybe is 2024. You have some third-party exclusives like Silent Hill 2, which is anticipated to come out in 2024. But you don't really know what else is coming from those internal Sony teams. So give them something to cling to, be it Ghost of Tsushima 2, or even an update on Wolverine, which I don't feel would be a proper game for the Game Awards, just given the close proximity to Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that they would want to steer away from. So Ghost of Tsushima 2, I think, is a good candidate for them to bring here.
Yeah.
And it would excite a lot of people. But I'd say Death Stranding 2 is really the only thing that we could say is as close to a lock-in for Sony that we have at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. Ghost 2, as which I'll call it, I think that would be very, very hype. So hopefully we can get it. Let's will it into existence. Let's go.
And now we're going to go to some of the third-party predictions that we have for the Game Awards, which in truth is the vast majority of the show would be the third-party partners, as this is their best venue that they can announce and showcase the games that they have in development and get people excited about all their new projects. And I want to start with Activision Blizzard because they always seem to appear at any presentation that Keighley is hosting.
Well, for me, I think the only thing we're going to see from Activision Blizzard is things that we already know about, which includes Call of Duty Warzone and potentially Diablo 4 DLC or some new character tease or something like that. I don't know if we'll see anything beyond what we already know about from Activision Blizzard. I think again, there's some people that think, well, now that Microsoft owns them, that the floodgates are going to open up and we're going to see some really cool announcements. But I personally, I'm not really expecting much here. I mean, I think last year we got some we get a Crash Team Racing 4v4 thing or something. We got something.
Might have. I mean,
whatever it is, it's not going to be big. Let's put it that way. So I think beyond Call of Duty and or Diablo 4, we're not getting much.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just going in with the expectation of maybe we get a Diablo 4 expansion or DLC for Diablo 4 from Activision Blizzard. But beyond that, I'm not anticipating anything from Activision Blizzard at this particular showcase. So if they are even there, I think I'd be quite surprised. But one company that will be there in some capacity, because they're always there, is Square Enix. And I want to start with some of your predictions of what you think Square Enix may bring to the Game Awards this year.
So I've got two things on my mind when it comes to Square Enix. It's not particularly sexy, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. The first one is Foam Stars. Remember that game from earlier this year that was announced and then there was an open beta? People loved Foam Stars. It does not have a release date. It's still to be announced or to be determined. We think it's probably going to be next year. So let's see Foam Stars at the Game Awards. It's probably going to show up in some capacity. Probably will get a release date as well, so everyone can play awesome games of Foam. And the other announcement, and I think this one is going to be. I mean, it's already been kind of teased, and there's been some chatter about Final Fantasy 16 will get some form of DLC. And forgive me, I know that there was a news article about it last week, and I believe the DLC was, Clive's origin story potentially, or something like that. Maybe that's not accurate, but I think we'll see Final Fantasy 16 DLC announced. I mean, Square always turns up to these events, and there's usually something pretty big announced. FF16 DLC. I think that fits the mold for Square Enix. I don't know though. Like maybe I'm missing something that maybe there's something else that they could potentially announce, but I'm going to stick with those two. Like Foam Stars is one, and FF16 DLC for me.
I do agree with you on Final Fantasy 16 getting DLC announcement at the Game Awards. Because when you look at some of the Square Enix tweets recently, or even announcements, it's very curious that Final Fantasy 16 is going to be getting an update to its arcade or score attack mode on the exact day of the Game Awards.
So it's a shadow drop, or something's going to happen.
I wouldn't say it's going to be a shadow drop per se, but I do think we're going to get a trailer for the DLC. And, for anyone who's played the game, I guess spoiler warnings. You've been warned. As you were playing through Final Fantasy 16, there was one icon that the game even references as being missing, and it is Leviathan.
Yes.
I think the DLC that we're going to see at the Game Awards is going to be Leviathan based, where we are going to encounter the Leviathan dominant. And we're going to see the story of why is this icon lost? What happened to its dominant? And we're going to get finally that bit of story. Because when you're playing the game, it almost feels as though it was supposed to be there, and they just kind of ripped it out.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm thinking the DLC direction is going to go in. And I mean, they did so many hints, and it felt like it was very deliberate that they were making mention of Leviathan the Lost. Well, now the Lost shall be found. And I'll be there day one whenever this DLC drops. I loved Final Fantasy 16.
Me too.
We are two very rare individuals, apparently, based on discourse online. So
yeah. I love FF16. I think it's one of the best games that came out this year. And I don't want to talk about Game of the Year snubs, but should have been in there personally. But we can move on. We don't have to talk about that.
I mean, my other anticipation for Square Enix is we're going to get a trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The release is coming at the end of February on the 29th. Leap year, leap day. And I think you want to market it one more significant time, get people excited with just that hype type trailer. I don't think we're going to get a demo announcement or anything regarding Rebirth at the Game Awards. I think that's something they would hold until early next year in terms of an announcement. But I think we're going to get a very hype trailer.
So just on Rebirth. That, it refreshed my memory with FF7 Remake. There was a demo, but it wasn't announced at the Game Awards, correct? It was announced early in January. Is that right? Previously?
Yes, I believe so, because the demo had been at PAX East, and then it was playable to the general public via PSN, I think a week later.
That's right.
And it was roughly
That's right.
Was it a month before the game had officially released?
Yeah, something like that. And there was a lot of chatter that they were going to drop a demo at the Game Awards, but they never did. So based on historical data and analytics, I think you're right. Yeah, they'll give us the trailer, they'll give us all that stuff, but no demo. Demo will probably come in January at some point. Or maybe not at all, but usually they'll give us a demo and then the save will allow you to carry it over to the full game like they normally do.
Yeah, it's kind of been a big thing for them over the last, dating back to pretty much 2017 or so. So I think they would repeat that with a Rebirth, but that'd be something that would come next year. So a nice hype trailer here for Rebirth, Final Fantasy 16 DLC, primarily focusing on Leviathan. Maybe we get another look at a smaller game like you had mentioned with Foam Stars, maybe something in like the Mana or Saga series, something that's very, very small to the majority of people, but still meaningful to Square fans.
Foam Stars is going to be there.
Is it though?
I don't know. Maybe not.
I mean,
I think it is.
I mean, they like to celebrate with champagne. I think that's what the foam is. I think it's from champagne.
There you go.
Did you know that lore?
No, I did not.
That's a damn shame. So this next company has been very busy over the last week or so, and they're going to be busy next week as we're getting the PSVR 2 release and a demo for Resident Evil 4. And just last week, we had a Dragon Dogma 2 presentation where they gave a release date of March 22nd of 2024 for Dragon's Dogma 2. And I am clearly talking about Capcom. What are your predictions and expectations for Capcom at the Game Awards?
Well, let me tell you what's not going to be there. Resident Evil. I don't think we're going to see anything from Capcom about Resident Evil, the next Resident Evil game, which I would say is probably RE9. So that's not going to happen. But you did mention Leviathan when you said Square Enix and FF16. And that kind of just jogged my memory about another game from Capcom that has Leviathan in it, and that is Exoprimal. I think we're going to see some updates from Exoprimal at the Game Awards, because that is exactly the type of announcement that we would see at the Game Awards. So, and we played Exoprimal. You, myself, and
we did.
John and Sean. We all played Exoprimal.
We beat it.
We liked the game. I think Exoprimal is a great game. It's a little shallow as far as its content, but with the proper love and attention, I think it could reemerge as a game that people get excited about again. Beyond something like Exo Primal, Nate, I don't think Capcom is going to have anything else for us at the Game Awards, personally.
See, I'm going to go in another direction. You're going very tame with what Capcom could be with. I'm going to go wild.
Ooh.
I think Capcom's going to go wild and have some fun. And I feel as though the Dragon's Dogma 2 presentation was when it was for a very deliberate purpose. And that purpose was they wanted to date it for the concluding fiscal year and have people know, hey, and investors of we're ending strong.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to the Game Awards. They've dated Dragon's Dogma, and they're going to show us what is next. And what's next is going to be Monster Hunter. Okay. We are due for a new Monster Hunter, and I think we're going to get a first look at what is the future of the franchise at the Game Awards. It's probably going to be a very brief teaser, nothing too substantial, but I think that's where Capcom may potentially be going at the Game Awards this year. Give us a new look at what Monster Hunter can be. So a sequel to Monster Hunter World. And let's see what a Monster Hunter built from the ground up for next generation systems can look and play like.
Yeah, I mean,
this could be big.
That could definitely happen. But I'm going to stick to my guns and say Exo Primal.
Look at all these puns to Exo Primal, guns, Leviathan. You clearly like that game a lot.
I do like Exo Primal.
So many references.
I wish it got more love from both Capcom and the fans. But again, not the platform to talk about various games. We can move on.
One day we'll do a retrospect on Exo Primal. What happened? Leviathan happened. I want to go to Bandai Namco, and I'm also going to include FromSoft here for a specific reason, because as we're approaching the Game Awards, everyone thinks of Elden Ring.
I think of Elden Ring when I think of the Game Awards, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Jeff Keighley had a lot of marketing with Elden Ring.
Yep.
And I'm approaching the Game Awards and Elden Ring with zero expectation. I don't think Elden Ring makes any appearance here.
I approach the Game Awards and Elden Ring with some expectation. I'm not saying it's a lock or very high expectations, but there has been some rumors and rumblings for a while now about Elden Ring DLC. And if my numbers are correct, my math is correct, Elden Ring is almost a 2-year-old game now, right? Like, I mean, it came out almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
I think Elden Ring DLC is ready to be unveiled, and I think the Game Awards is the venue for it, just in the same way as the game itself. I'm going to say we're going to see the first tease of the Elden Ring DLC, which will be coming out next year.
See, I love your optimism here. I love it because I want to see what's next for Elden Ring. We've seen the rumors. We've had FromSoft officially come out and say progress is going quite smooth on the expansion for Elden Ring. And I would love to see it this week. I just don't think FromSoft is going to be... I don't think FromSoft's going to have any presence at the Game Awards, but Bandai Namco will. And I think we're finally going to get a trailer and maybe a release window, even if it is just a vague 2024 or whenever the game does release. And I think it's going to be for a game they had announced last year with a teaser trailer, and that is Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. And this is them bringing back a franchise that we haven't seen in, I believe, almost a decade. Very popular during the PS2, GameCube, Xbox generation. And we know they're coming back with it. So I wouldn't be too surprised to get a formal look at the game at the Game Awards. It definitely has that tone and feel that fits the Game Awards. Dragon Ball Z is, world famous. It definitely has a strong base in America. Japanese fan, all about it. Dragon Ball Super is or was a very successful television show. The manga is ongoing. So it feels as though this would be a proper venue for something like Dragon Ball to reveal what's next for that IP and the franchise of Budokai Tenkaichi. So that's my expectation for Bandai Namco at the Game Awards. As much as I would love Elden Ring to be there, I think Goku and friends are going to be the ones who receive the invitation.
So before we move on, let's talk about FromSoft just real quick. You said that you don't think FromSoft is going to make an appearance, and I mean that you're probably right. However, let's look at the history. FromSoft has been at the Game Awards every single year in the last several years. Not only have they won Game of the Year for Sekiro, Elden Ring, Armored Core was announced last year and was released this year. You don't believe that FromSoft will not have any appearance this year? I feel like they'll turn up. They have to turn up.
Maybe if like Armored Core is getting some DLC or an expansion, maybe they would relay that type of information. I mean, they'd show up in the sense of they'll have a stage presence because Armored Core has been nominated for things. But in terms of announcements, I think FromSoft is going to sit this year out.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens.
Now, this company I bring up solely because we know they have a game coming up fairly soon. They did make a meaningful announcement this year as well with Metal Gear Solid Delta. We know they have Silent Hill 2, which was announced last year. They just released a Metal Gear Solid collection. And it's Konami. I'm going in with no expectation that Konami will have any presence at the Game Awards, as I kind of feel as though there's still a grudge between Keighley and Konami due to the Kojima situation dating back to Metal Gear Solid 5.
I 100% agree with you. And this is actually the first publisher that I've said nothing is going to happen at all. So, yeah, Konami is not going to have a presence at the Game Awards, even without the Jeff Keighley, Kojima love triangle that's going on. I think Konami will reveal and announce their games when Konami is ready to. I don't think they're going to use the Game Awards as a platform at all.
Now, this company has sent out invitations, and it's caused quite a lot of online speculation. And it's Sega, as they put out a interesting invitation touting new energy, new beginnings, and everything. And people have been analyzing the font, trying to figure out what could this be for. And it's gone as far as Maximilian requesting and inquiring how many other fighting YouTube channels or fighting influencers also got this invitation, and non-fighting influencers got the invitation, as the ongoing theory is that it may be referring to a brand new Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, I have heard about this, and there's also the little thing that happened last week in Japan where Sega announced Virtua Fighter 3TB for arcades, I believe. And for those people that don't know what 3TB is, it's obviously the sequel to Virtua Fighter 2, and you may be asking, well, why is that happening? Well, 3TB was actually a launch title on the Sega Dreamcast. And it was actually a really good fighting game, but the only problem with 3TB was that it got buried at the time because PlayStation and Xbox were releasing games like Tekken and various other 3D games that really just Dead or Alive is the other game I was thinking of that really just kind of eclipsed anything that Virtua Fighter was doing at the time, which is a little unfortunate. But I don't think it's 3TB. It's also hard for me to imagine that they're just going to announce Virtua Fighter 6. Is that where we're at now? It's 6, right?
I believe so. I think the last one was Virtua Fighter 5 on PS360.
But you have to wonder, Sega kind of reaching out to various influencers, some that are in the fighting game community. Now, my question is, Nate, do you know of anyone that's not in the fighting game community that received this tease?
I do not. I've been trying to follow all the individuals who had received the invitation, and it feels as though it's kind of a small selected group of people, but it's hard to really decipher any true grounded speculation based on the invitation alone. And I mean, I also saw Jeff Keighley put out a tweet that could have been completely unrelated,
Mhm.
where he was saying, I told you next week is going to be crazy,
Yeah.
which immediately would have me
Ooh,
thinking, was this
Crazy
a reference
Taxi.
to those invitation and it's Crazy Taxi?
Mm, the super game.
Exactly. And I mean, wouldn't that kind of be new birth, new energy?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it
And
could
I
be.
mean, and given again the scope of the Game Awards and how many individuals do watch it, if you're going to launch something like a super game, you want as much attention as you can have. So announcing the super Crazy Taxi, maybe this is the venue of choice to do so. I mean, Sega has a lot of projects that still need to be announced, whether it is the Crazy Taxi game, whether it is the recently leaked Jet Set Radio game,
Right.
could it be a brand new Sonic game? There are so many things that this could be referencing. I mean, I look at the color of the invitation, and one of the thoughts I also had was, could this be related to Phantasy Star Online? That's
Right.
been an ongoing project for them as well as a live service game.
Sure.
Could this be a new chapter?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to just throw something completely random out and say it's Condemned Criminal Origins 3. How about that?
That is a fantastic thing. And the fact that we're not getting that now is going to upset me.
I know. I shouldn't have mentioned
So, yeah, what the hell?
it. Hey,
Damn
look,
you.
Sega follows me on Twitter. Where's my invite? It got lost in the mail, apparently. I don't know. But I'm curious to see what Sega has for us. Look, I love Sega, but sometimes they get too excited about their own announcements. They get high on their own supply, if you will. And I'm hoping this announcement will actually live up to the expectations that we're seeing or that we think it might be. I like your idea about Crazy Taxi, but we'll just have to wait and see. Virtua Fighter 6 would also be a very hype announcement as well, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really just trying to temper expectations on this one. I'm trying not to get too excited about it.
Yeah, that's where I am with this. I'm going in with, hey, Sega's going to have something there. Let them surprise me with what it could be, because we are definitely in that renaissance era of the fighting genre.
Yep.
We have so many making comebacks in strong ways. So if Virtua Fighter could come back in a meaningful way, I would be there day one.
Yes.
But really, any of the games we have mentioned, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, even Phantasy Star Online, if you're coming in with something ambitious, it's going to have my interest. I just don't want this tease to end up being a Dreamcast keychain that
right.
has the VMU have a microscopic screen like they did, what was it, the Game Gear keychain in Japan that had a quarter of an inch screen or something.
Yeah. Could be anything, honestly, mate. Could be an endless run of mobile game for all we know. We don't know what this could be.
No.
Maybe it's the AAA Nights game. We don't know what it is.
I mean, maybe it's Skies of Arcadia.
Oh God. Now, I was messing with you with Condemned Criminal Origins 3. Now you're messing with me with Skies of Arcadia.
Hey. I mean, it could also be a new Valkyrie Chronicles.
It could be. I mean, Sega has such an amazing lineup of games, and they have a lot of ownership on many, many awesome franchises from many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
We're throwing darts at a dartboard at this point, but I like your Crazy Taxi tease. I personally, I'm going to say it's a Virtua Fighter game.
Yeah, I mean, we know something's coming. It's just a question of what, and hopefully it lives up to the announcement. Otherwise, Sega, you may not have sent out the best invite.
We'll see.
I want to go to EA, a little more of a Western company here. And EA typically brings a little bit of something here. And I think for this year's Game Awards would be a good venue for EA and BioWare to show us what's happening with Dragon Age, as a lot of the rumors are currently projecting the game to come out at the earliest summer 2024 or fall 2024. And if that is the case, I would kind of anticipate them to use this show to give us a new look at the game, as it has been a while, set a little more tone for what the direction of the game is going to be, because it's been a long time since the last Dragon Age game. And admittedly, I'm not a huge Dragon Age fan.
Mm-hmm.
But now in a world post Baldur's Gate 3, I kind of feel as though they have a lot in front of them to overcome and, kind of quell.
Yeah, I think EA is probably going to show us some Dragon Age stuff at the Game Awards. I mean, every year there is some type of tease. Last year there was something Dragon Age related. I think the year before that there was some Mass Effect stuff. Maybe that was the previous year. But in any case, Dragon Age is actually a game and a series that I do like, and I've played all of them. I've played 1, 2, and Inquisition, and I really enjoy those games. The problem is, however, Nate, is that I played Dragon Age 1 many, 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 many years ago. It was a long time ago. I was living in another state, and it was like 2 house moves, and this was on the 360 that it had Red Ring of Death on it. We're going back a long, long time ago. Dragon Age 2 was also a game it's been around for a long time. Inquisition obviously is a little more modern, but none of these games, have they're not really that current anymore. So I think you're right. I think on the coattails of Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to probably sweep everything at the Game Awards this year, let's be honest, BioWare is preparing themselves for ramping up the marketing for the next Dragon Age game, which has been in development for a long, long time. So yeah, I think that's the move for EA this year at the Game Awards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if they'd have really anything else in their pipeline that they'd be ready to announce at the Game Awards. Like Mass Effect, we know they just did a thing back in November with a very brief teaser. So that's something that's still a long ways off, especially considering BioWare should be all hands on deck with Dragon Age. And any of the other internal teams from EA, they just had the Star Wars game come out earlier this year.
Yeah.
So they're not ready to do anything. You're not going to highlight, a Madden game or anything.
No,
so I think
definitely not.
I think Dragon Age is probably their best bet. And how I want to go to Ubisoft, because they have a lot coming in really kind of a close proximity. They have the Avatar game coming out the week of the Game Awards, I believe, if I have my dates correct. And we kind of have a general idea of what they're coming out with in 2024. We know they have the brand new 2D Prince of Persia game coming out in early 2024. We got a first look at their Star Wars Outlaw game back in June. And that was also, I believe, dated for 2024. And then we have I guess you could call it the wild card game, the game that refuses to come out. It's in endless delay turmoil, Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
Any of these, do you think they make a presence at the Game Awards?
The only game that I feel like Ubisoft will show up with at the Game Awards would be the Prince of Persia game that is coming out next year. Other than that, I don't expect Ubisoft to have anything else. But Prince of Persia, I would say, is the game. And I'm very much looking forward to playing that game.
Likewise, the Prince of Persia game is definitely something I'm looking forward to. I would also agree with you that we'll get a trailer here. And I'm going to say Skull and Bones will get a trailer and a release date. Whether or not that release date sticks will be something that will be determined in time. But I think Ubisoft just finally has to set that ship to sail.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. Skull and Bones, I guess, could be there. Prince of Persia, it's happening.
Yeah, I'd say Skull and Bones is one of those games where most people are like, who cares? Just release it or don't.
Right.
Any interest has waned at this point.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that will pretty much be Ubisoft's presence at the Game Awards. Maybe we get a look at Star Wars Outlaw one more time, but I wouldn't be too surprised if that is held for, a state of play or an Xbox developer direct or something in the early portion of 2024. beyond that, I'm not anticipating anything else from Ubisoft at this time. Like, we know they had begun to hire for a new Splinter Cell, but I don't think we'd see anything about that game here.
No.
If, you know. And now, another thing that will take up a fair sizable portion of the Game Award are the indie studios. And these are very difficult to give predictions as there are so many indie studios that could have a presence here. But I would feel comfortable in saying I think we're going to see a fairly significant amount of announcements from some of the Asian based indie studios, be it in China, Taiwan, Japan, the Koreas, and such, where we have seen a lot of representation in previous years as Tencent has become more and more involved in gaming. We have NC Soft and such. And I think we're going to see a lot of games from that, be it gotcha games and, Genshin Impact, stuff like that. But there are other indie studios that I kind of want to make specific mention of. One has already confirmed that they will be announcing a game, and that was Shark Mob. And another one I want to bring up, really just for the ha-has, is Team Cherry.
Oh, come on. We're not getting Silksong too. No. I mean, no. I think the last time we predicted a Nintendo Direct, I don't know if we actually said it on the air or beforehand as we were talking about things. We both kind of agreed that Silksong, it's not that it's been cancelled, but it's just something that we should just really not talk about because we just don't know what state it's in right now and if it will ever come out.
So you know what's ironic, though? Is 1 year ago, almost to the day, is when there were a bunch of fake emails going out from
I remember that.
Fraudulent Team Cherry.
You're right.
Employees saying, hey, we got review codes. If you want to partake, we'll send you a Steam code and such. You just have to click this link, and we're willing to sponsor videos and everything. And it went to a lot of people.
Went to myself. I was someone that had that email, and I was looking at it, entertaining whether I should actually do this. And I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where I had to pause and basically get it approved from someone. And by the time that person had come back and said, you're good to proceed, then it was already been determined that that email was a scam. So I was very lucky that I didn't click on anything. But you're right. It was a year ago when there was some fake emails going around from a fake Team Cherry account. I don't think we're going to see Silksong at the Game Awards, Nate. Come on. Let's be serious.
You got to hold hope.
Silksong will reveal itself when it's ready. And I don't know when that day will come.
It's feeling like never.
Probably not. I mean, we don't even really know what's going on at Team Cherry as far as how are they doing as a company? Do they have enough cash flow? Are they affected by layoffs? We don't really know much about what's going on with them.
No. Aren't they a team of like 5?
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very small. So where's hopefully they haven't run out of money and they're trying to create, they're trying to venture capital or get more in cash injection.
Well, they do have that day one Game Pass deal.
They do, but
that was a couple of years ago.
That was. I mean, deals have end of life dates. Deals have end dates in place. I think, and we of course we don't know about the Game Pass deal that has with Team Cherry and Xbox for Silksong. But maybe there was stipulation that, you had to ship the game before the end of 2023. And hey, look, there's still some time, right? But I just don't know, what's happening with Team Cherry. And the fact that no one really knows what's going on with them just tells me that there's really no point talking about them at the Game Awards.
So one studio that we haven't seen a game from in a while, but we do know they're working on a brand new IP, one where the head of the company has said it will essentially make or break the studio's future. And it's Moon Studios. and they have a new IP which they have described as very Diablo-like. Do you think maybe the Game Awards is the proper venue for them to formally announce this? This is a game that they have a partnership with Private Division on,
Mhm.
and they've talked about it a little bit over the last couple of years. And it's been, I believe, what now, 3 years since Ori and the Will of the Wisp has
Yeah.
been announced or had released.
Mhm.
So I feel as though they could potentially be in a good position to announce what this project is and even show it.
Yeah. Moon Studios will be at the Game Awards, I think. I think they'll have the unveiling of their new game. Not sure what it's going to be, but the Game Awards is a good venue for someone like Moon to turn up. Ori is such a beloved game. Both games are absolute masterpieces. Love those games. Everything about them, everything about Ori and everything about Moon screams Game Awards to me. So yes, next game will be announced at the Game Awards.
Now we have to bring up Hazelight and everyone's favorite, the Game Award personality, I guess you would call him. Joseph, fuck the Oscars, Ferris. And we looked at their production line where their first game came out in 2018. Then It Takes Two came out in 2021. And it feels though we are on schedule for a brand new announcement from Hazelight. As if we want to look at history and determine a pattern, it would suggest that their next game could come out as early as next year. So we know he is very fond of the Game Awards. So it feels as though this could potentially be the proper venue for them to unveil their next game.
I think you're right. I mean, Joseph Ferris will be at the Game Awards. We know he's there every single year. It Takes Two did win Game of the Year. Was it 2 years ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. I mean, he's going to be at the Game Awards. His new game is probably going to be unveiled at the Game Awards. Jeff Keighley loves Joseph Ferris. He's probably on the plane heading over here right now as we speak. It's almost a lock, in my opinion, that we see the new Hazelight game at the Game Awards.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. And there's going to be countless other indie games that we could never even fathom a prediction for because there's far too many indie studios to
Why don't you
really think of.
Why don't you throw one out there? Just anything from left field. Just give me one. I've got one in mind, which is probably not going to happen, but I'm going to say it anyway.
So just a random announcement.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I'll start, and so hopefully you'll come up back with something. I'm going to say Metal Slug Tactics.
All right, I like that. It's been a while.
Been a long while. You have anything?
I'm going to say I have no idea. Trying to think of a game we haven't heard of in a long time that we're overdue. You know what? I'm going to go with Hollow Knight Silksong.
Okay.
It's going to surprise us and it's going to make an appearance, and everyone's going to say, wow, it finally came out of its cocoon.
I hope I'm wrong.
Actually, because I just said cocoon, I'm going to walk back Hollow Knight because cocoon just reminded me we are due to see Play Dead's new game.
We are. Actually, we are. You're right.
So that's what I'm going to go with, Play Dead's new game.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Look at that connecting
There you
from
go.
one game that had nothing to do with the other, using the term cocoon, which was made by a former Play Dead employee. Look at that circle.
Poor Silksong, you buried it once again.
It buried itself.
It'll never come out.
Hey, it's still in, I don't know what the hell it's doing. Metamorphosizing into a butterfly or something.
Could be.
With that, we'll go to the Streamlabs portions of the episode. Our first question for a $3 donation comes from Aronson. Says, hello to you and MVG. Do you know if Necro Philippe from Universal Nintendo is reliable? Hearing a lot about him when it comes to insider stuff lately, so was curious of your thoughts. Also heard anything Zelda for the end of the year. What about Twilight Princess, The Wind Waker, and Metroid Prime 2 and 3? So yes, I am familiar with Necro. Good individual. And, he shares information that he's comfortable sharing. I won't, comment on every piece of information that he has put out there, but he has put out reliable and accurate information time and time again. As with any individual that puts out information, you're not going to be 100% accurate on every single thing. As for, Zelda or even Metroid Prime 2 or 3, as we discussed in this episode, maybe they could show up at the Game Awards, but we're really not going in with that high of expectation that they will be there. Then had our second question comes from Collins Gaming, who donated $10 and writes, I know a lot of video game podcast news shows, examples, Nate the Hate, Spawncast, Jeff Grubb, Kinda Funny, many more, but I hardly know anything for movies, shows, DC, Marvel, general entertainment. Do you know of any? What do you both listen to?
I don't know of any in that genre. And honestly, I kind of tend to not listen to other video game podcasts very often, not because I'm not a fan of them. I think, for myself, most of the time, I just want to not think about video games and just unplug and go to another topic or another, another hobby or another, area or another genre, I should say. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'm actually a big fan of true crime podcasts. I like to listen to a lot of true crime type stuff. There's no real reason for that. I just like to, sit down, listen to one, and maybe play some games at the same time. But movie stuff, I don't really know. Do you have any that you know of?
I don't listen to podcasts in general.
Right.
So I wouldn't be able to recommend any general or movie ones. I guess a Google search would be the best option there, but
and I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
Check out the iTunes charts and listen, pick one up and go from there, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, we're not too helpful on that one. Ben had a $1 donation from Arrow. Love the show, guys. Recently, there's been Super NES colored ABXY buttons appearing in recent Switch games like Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door and even third-party games like Fashion Dreamer. Do you think it's future-proofing for a Switch 2? Maybe the name is Super Nintendo Switch.
I do not personally know.
I don't think it's future-proofing, as I feel we would see a lot more examples. I'm not going to say that I'm not saying there is a 0% chance that the Switch successor controller will be color coordinated buttons, because it's definitely something to take note of why is this happening. And as we said, I believe it was in a previous episode, that it's clearly not just for accessibility, because that would only work if the buttons on the controller match the colors. So it was definitely some reason behind it. Whether or not it is related to new hardware will be, something that's going to be determined in the future. But we've seen these color coordinated buttons before, even outside of the Super Nintendo. I believe the 3DS also had them. So something to take note of, and maybe it's something Nintendo will utilize moving forward, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's future proofing. Then had a $2.19 donation from South Coast Horizon. In Pokemon Gen 1, Butterfree is the final evolution of the Caterpie, but look at the striking similarity to Venonat and Butterfree. Do you believe the programmers mistook Butterfree and Venomoth and just decided to leave the error?
You're going to have to answer this one because number one, I don't know what he's talking about. And number two, I don't care about Pokemon. So this is all you need.
Yes. I would imagine they didn't make that type of mistake, but it does happen. Maybe it was just them having some fun. Then had a $1 donation from Liam Werner. If the next Switch has backwards compatibility at all, Do you think we'll have to use current gen Joy-Cons with those games still, or do you think we'll be able to just use the next gen controllers, which will hopefully have the drift issue solved?
The latter.
I would agree, and I would hope that is the situation. It would be just catastrophic if you could only use the current Switch Joy-Cons on a platform that'd just be weird.
I think so too.
Then had a follow-up $1 donation from Liam Warner. If the next Nintendo console is next gen and they do upgrades for current gen titles, do you think it will only be for Switch originals? Or do you think any GameCube, Wii, or Wii U re releases on the Switch will improve too, like Pikmin 1 and 2, Skyward Sword HD, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and so on?
I think that anything that runs on the Switch that Nintendo decides to bring to the next gen via patch, they will. And I don't think it'll really discriminate whether it is, the game's development started on the Switch or if it's a previous GameCube release. Because at the end of the day, they're all Switch games that run on the Switch. So I could potentially see them bringing anything forward, really.
Then had a $2 donation from Jackie G. Turning the PlayStation Portal into a Shenmue player reminded me we really never did get the double pack on Switch, huh? What an injustice. A true injustice indeed.
Yes.
And our final Streamlabs question for this episode comes from Damian Ellington, donated $5, and writes, with Tears of the Kingdom just recently released, and it normally takes 5 to 6 years for a new game, and with a new Nintendo system coming out, do you think they will re-release Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild with updated graphics, or come out with a remaster of an old Zelda game?
I think Breath of the Wild is an almost certain game to and come to the next Nintendo hardware. Tears of the Kingdom, I mean, look, let's take backward compatibility away from this, right? Because I think it's very messy, very cloudy to say. But if we're talking about an enhanced game on the next Nintendo hardware, I would definitely see Breath of the Wild in that conversation. I'd probably see Tears of the Kingdom as well, but they may hold on that for a couple of years. I don't think that'd be something that we would see in the first year. We may see that like a little later on, potentially. As for any other Zelda games, I mean, we know that they like to go back into their back catalog and, bring games forward. So you couldn't really rule out the possibility of, older games as well. There's obviously the Wind Waker HD and the Twilight Princess stuff as well. So yeah, I think in general, Nintendo will look at the success of the Switch, look to see what sold well, what moves that they made were, bore fruit and were successful for them, and they would probably repeat the same thing here.
Yeah, I think they would go with some remake or remasters of some of the older style Zelda games. It's also hard to say their real approach here, only because though Tears of the Kingdom came out this year, I think a lot of people would then say that development concluded in 2023 because that was the release timing. And with that, they would then operate under the condition or belief that work on a new Zelda game wouldn't have started until later 2023.
Right.
When in fact, they could have already been working on new concepts and prototyping what would be for the next Zelda game, even as Tears of the Kingdom was beginning to approach the finish line. So, in that type of situation, let's say work on the next 3D Zelda game started in 2022, you're looking at a release now, let's say at the earliest 2026, potentially 2027. And if you have the new hardware coming out in the latter half of 2024, you really don't have that much of a gulf to fill with, Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom enhanced releases. If you do a remaster or a remake of some of the other older Zelda games, let's say in the early portion of 2025, that can carry you into 2026 where you announce the next 3D Zelda game. And you don't need to have those filler type releases of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. So it really comes down to what Nintendo's roadmap looks like for future Zelda releases.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say at the moment.
Yep. Agree.
That is our final Streamlabs question for this week. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount, ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. Donate $100 or more. We'll dedicate the episode to you. And today's episode, once again, is dedicated to Shamsa. And with that, I'd like to thank MVG for joining me as always.
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure, Nate. And go Foam Stars.
And let us know your predictions and expectations for the Game Awards in the comment section below. Will MVG be right and Foam Stars be the headliner? Or will something else be the headlining show? But until next time, continue to embrace the hate.